Hello, Mr. Hawes. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, Clara. Well, my name is James Hawes. I'm a historian, and I've written the shortest history of Germany and the shortest history of England. I am currently working on the shortest history of Ireland. I was a novelist first. I've had six novels published with a very good publisher in London, but nowadays I'm more interested in real stories about real things because I think now is really a time when we need more than ever to understand history, and it's the job of anyone who's interested in history to really communicate these truths, these sometimes forgotten truths, to a wide range of people, not just to experts, but to write in a way which people can really grab and understand. So that's what I've been trying to do. And I was very proud a couple of weeks ago when the French ambassador in Germany told the new Australian ambassador on Twitter, on X, that she should read my book to understand this great and glorious country, Germany. So
Oh, wow.
no, I was very pleased.
But just one more question about writing. What do you enjoy most about writing and about writing shortest texts?
Um, the enjoyable part is the editing, really, because when I write these shortest history books, the first version I have is maybe three times as long as the original book. Because I do all the research in the proper way. It's like doing a PhD all over again. I go to the original sources. I don't just take things from Wikipedia and so forth. And then this takes me 2 or 3 years, really. And after that period, I've then got a manuscript that's maybe 150,000 words long. And I have to then get that down to 55,000 words. And that means that you have to really discover what the Germans would call the rote Faden, the Ariadne's thread through the labyrinth. What is it that really tells the story? Because here's everything. I love everything in history. I could spend my entire life reading old newspapers and things. But when you want to tell the story of a country, you need to let the story reveal to you the kind of secret thread that links it all together. And that's the
And,
joy of it.
and you could also insert some hilarious things. This is also something good.
Well, if it's fun, it's so much better because sometimes things that are quite fun actually do show what's really going on. Most particularly. So yes, I hope very much they're fun, but the most important thing is that they are readable. They take the reader in a story which hangs together in the same way as a novel hangs together. And that doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean it's a myth, but it means you locate within the forest of history the kind of the path which leads through it.
Yeah, and this is very good in your book. I liked it very much. Uh, so let's show it first. Probably everyone has seen it already in some, at least at the airports, bookshops. These are always very on the front of the shop
Yeah, yeah.
because they are easy to carry and
You can read it
have.
all on one long haul flight.
Yes, but the content is also good. So, since you were mentioning a forest, why does every German school child learn something about the Battle of the Teutoburger Wald?
Well, this is a really interesting question, actually. And it comes about as a result, really, of the Prussianization of Germany and the German education system. And this is one of the most important things about German history. And I'm constantly surprised. I hope there are some young people going to listen to this. I'm constantly surprised how few people, for example, I was in Frankfurt and talking to people there, and none of them seemed to realize that their own city had actually been surrounded by the Prussian army in 1866 and threatened with complete destruction if they didn't pay an enormous ransom in gold within 24 hours. Now, Prussia, in other words, Prussia conquered Germany. And once it had conquered Germany, it then imposed the Prussian view of history onto Germany. And one of the most important historical planks, historical supports of this view was the Prussian idea that the only really German bits of Germany were where the Romans hadn't got. This is completely ahistorical, of course. Most of the big German cities, Frankfurt, uh, Bonn, Mainz, these Köln, all these places grew up in the Roman Empire. But the Prussians wanted to push this idea that true Germanness was not Roman, which to Bismarck also meant not Catholic, of course. So that they pushed very heavily this idea that the battle, which of course did take place and was a great defeat for the Romans, somehow completely freed Germany from Roman influence. And it's no accident that Luther himself, Martin Luther, frequently compared himself to Arminius in his fight against the Catholic Church. So the status of Arminius and the Teutoburger Wald in the German school children's view of history is actually a result of the Prussian educational system and the Prussian view of German history. Because in fact, it didn't end. Most Germans today seem to think that because of that victory in 9 AD, Germany was not Romanized, and it's completely untrue, of course. Large areas of Germany, as I say, all the biggest cities of Western Germany, including Vienna, were actually Roman cities. And Prussia, the Eastern Germany, was in fact not even German at this stage, never mind non-Romanized. So it's part of that very sort of strange and distorted view of history that the Prussians imposed on the whole of Germany for the next 3 generations.
But the Romans considered actually the population beyond the Elbe too difficult to deal with. I mean, I am Italian, so I can say that. Can you tell us something about that?
Well, the Romans. I mean, we know that the Roman general Drusus got as far as the River Elbe now, and then he turned back. It seems most likely that his army basically wouldn't go any further, like Alexander's army refused to go into India, Alexander the Great. They just wouldn't go any further. They'd been victorious up to now, but they turned around and just came back saying, okay, we've come, we've seen, we've conquered, and now we're going to go back. And it seemed as though Germany, the whole of modern Germany, well, the whole of modern Western Germany was now pacified and Roman territory. That is, of course, that's the backstory to the German victory of 9 AD, is that the Roman general at the time thought he was in pacified country. Arminius himself had been brought up in Rome. The Romans wrongly thought that Germania was now pacified. So they stopped at the Elbe. We don't know why, really, just because there are limits to every empire, I guess. It's also a very unattractive country. I don't mean to insult it, but in terms of Roman agriculture, it was just one big forest and swamp. A lot of it still is, to be honest with you. It's not rich countryside. It's very poor forest and very wet countryside, not attractive to Roman farmers and colonists at all, you know.
I mean, Tacitus is writing also about that Germania is only nice to people who were born there.
Well, yes, Tacitus is a fascinating writer because he's writing bestseller history really for the Roman audience, and the Roman audience want to hear these stories of the wild frontiers. So Tacitus has arguments with the Caesars of his day, and he's trying to present the Germans, the Germani, as somehow noble savages in our empire who teach us that we Romans should be more like the old Romans, the old Republican Romans used to be. So again, Tacitus's view of the Germans is not totally reliable either, because it's part of a sort of campaign in his mind to bring Rome back to its old virtues.
Okay, it was a kind of moral parallel.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
to the decadent Romans.
Precisely that, yes.
Okay, so let's make a jump now to 1933. This was the last free election before Hitler, and the most votes for Hitler were in East Germany. Can you comment this?
Well, yes, and even more importantly, in a way, is what happened in the elections, the 2 elections, the 3 elections before that. And the lovely thing about this is that anyone listening to this, watching this broadcast, can look for themselves at the maps. This is not a complicated theory that leads lots of. If you look at the maps, which are generally accepted as being accurate, you can see very clearly that in that dreadful, vital year of 1930, when Hitler's party suddenly became the second strongest party, they relied almost entirely on votes from the East. In 1932, on the two elections then, it's the same story. They start to penetrate the West, but always their scores are much higher in the East. And this is also true then in 1933. In 1933, the election, by then Hitler is already Chancellor. He's already in control of the media. And despite that, in areas like Cologne and Aachen, he still only gets 20%. Whereas in East Prussia, he's getting 60, 70% votes. And of course, the modern listeners must remember that in those days, the German East was far bigger relatively to the West and had far more population relatively to the West. So that it was basically, you can say it polemically, but simply, and it's true, that if there had been no Eastern votes, there would be no Hitler. Or to put it the other way around, if everyone in Germany had voted like the people in the Rhineland or the people in Bavaria, Hitler could not have taken power.
So now, can you please describe us what is the Limes Germanicus?
Well, the Limes Germanicus is a line which the Romans built in around 100 AD. It's a line of fortifications. It's incredible that it's not better known, because it's like Europe's Great Wall of China. It's 900 kilometers long. It has, I think, 500 or 600 different forts, and you can see some of them today because recently it's attained UNESCO World Heritage status. And it cuts in from really around modern Bonn and Mainz, Cologne. It takes in all that area, then it does a little kink to take in Frankfurt and goes down close to the present-day Austrian-German border. Now, so that everything west and south of that was completely Romanized for 150 years. Beyond that, you had a large area which was very much influenced by Rome, because they sold things to the Roman Empire, they provided soldiers for the Roman Empire, and it's only beyond the Elbe that you have a country which is completely non-Romanized, perhaps up into modern-day Niedersachsen, up there towards Hamburg as well. Wasn't really much touched, but the whole of what we now call the Rhineland and Baden-Württemberg and Bavaria was within the Roman sphere of influence in this period.
So the border, the eastern border of Germany was not that clear. So how far stretched Germany is open.
It's open. We don't even know who actually lived there. It seems that around the time of this period, the Slavic tribes were starting to close in. We know we have the Huns and so forth coming in later. The Germans appear to have been pushed further westward, so that by the millennium, by 1000 AD, the Elbe is an ethnic border. There are no Germans east of the Elbe. In other words, that territory east of the Elbe is completely Slavic by the millennium. Well, before that, by around 800 AD probably. So, and this is very important when we think about Germany, and it's sometimes very hard for Germans to imagine. They blink and shake their heads with surprise when I say, you do realize that when Cologne was 1200 years old, Berlin was still just a Slavic fishing village. It wasn't even German, let alone the capital. And this is probably the most important thing in the book, is this underlying difference between the West and the East, is because everything east of the Elbe is essentially colonized. It was colonized by the Germans at exactly the same time the English were colonizing Ireland. It's part of this, and it's caused by climate change. Because around the turn of the millennium, this thing called the medieval warm period starts, in which the temperatures are even higher than now, today. You could grow wheat, suddenly you could grow wheat in southern Sweden. You could grow wine in the Midlands of England. And this suddenly meant that areas like Ireland in the west and present-day Poland in the east were suddenly much more desirable farmland. The population of civilized Europe, say Italy, France, Germany, Western Germany, was massively expanding because there's more and more food. And so people were looking for new land. And it's in the 12th century AD that the Teutonic Knights, backed by the Catholic Church, it's called the Northern Branch of the Second Crusade, and they go east over across the Elbe, and they eventually, in a process of maybe 200 years, take over everything which we would then recognize as East Germany. But that leaves a fundamental difference.
So,
and
as you mentioned it, what role does religion play in all this?
Well, at this stage, of course, everyone's still Catholic. In this stage in the conquest, there is no difference, except that the Slavs are pagans. So the Catholic Church is very keen to conquer them and make them convert into Catholics. We all know in Germany the split is religion, but that religious split is nothing to do with confession. It's not to do with whether or not you believe in transubstantiation or anything like that. What it is, it's an expression of a social difference. And the social difference is this, and you see it all over the world, wherever colonization has happened. People in colonies are different from people in their motherland. We see this in England and the English in Ireland. We see it with the French in Algeria. We see it in the Germans in East Germany, because when you are safe in your homeland, no one is disputing your right to the land. You've been there forever. Your great-great-grandparents have been here forever. You're at peace with yourself. You feel happy. You feel at home. Colonists always feel threatened because they know that the native people who might be a majority, like in Ireland, like in Algeria, might one day come and kill you and take their land back. And so everywhere in the world where you have a colonial movement, the colonists tend to develop a kind of authoritarian notion of their state. They need a state which will back them as an ethnic minority at all costs. They need a state which is prepared to move with paramilitary force at any moment to protect them. And they have a very strong sense of them versus us. And that is entirely different in East Germany as opposed to West Germany. And it's because of that the different social forms arise, and it's because of that that Lutheranism arises. Protestantism tends to arise in countries which have been colonized, which are colonizing countries. It's a very strange thing. So that the Luther is from the east of Germany, and the people who first take Luther up politically are the Teutonic Knights, who say, fantastic, Luther has given us a reason to rebel against the Habsburg Empire, against the Holy Roman Empire. We will not be the Teutonic Knights anymore. We will call ourselves the Prussian state, and this will be our state religion.
This is so. This is really incredible. But is there a connection with if I think after the unification, after the Wende, a disproportionate number of women from East Germany moved to the West. Is there a connection?
I think that is something which we see almost everywhere, where you have a drift towards cities. Whether you're talking about Spain in the 1950s or Ireland in the 1980s, Eastern Europe now, the drift from countries like Romania, Ukraine, Poland, it's always more women. Because women in traditional societies, women are far more oppressed. They have to do domestic work. They can't get proper jobs. Their husbands rule them, perhaps violently. And it always seems to be women who most want to get to a modern urban society, because the freedom because they have so few freedoms in a rural society. It's probably true in Italy as well. I don't know Italy well enough, but I think it's probably true there.
Oh, it's your next work.
Well, my sister lives in Liguria, so she could do that, not me.
Okay. So the extreme right is now strongest in East Germany. So this means that all the well-educated young women, after the reunification, they went to the West, and so the the men, old elder men, remain back. Is that maybe a reason for the situation now?
Well, it's possibly a contributor now, but the trouble is, and this is something again which is quite hard for people to understand or to accept in Germany, is that the voters in the eastern part of Germany have always had a tendency to vote for authoritarian right-wing parties. You can trace this on the maps back in the 19th century under the Kaiserreich, under Wilhelm II. The Prussian Conservative Party was completely rooted in the East. In the Weimar Republic, before the Nazis, there was a thing called the German National People's Party, a kind of very right-wing sort of semi-fascist party, and it depended entirely on votes from the East. This is a big red-hot issue in Germany today because a lot of people, a lot of liberal people, tend to say, oh, well, the East Germans vote this way because they had 40 years of Soviet occupation, and then we, the West, we weren't nice enough to them after reunification. We didn't let them keep in their industries and so forth. And this is not an explanation. I'm sorry. Since unification, the West German state has given 2 trillion euros to the East German state. It's extraordinary. It's like the EU, like the EU's package to Greece every year for 30 years. And they still vote right wing. You can, and it's a big problem because people have got to understand that sometimes you cannot cure a cultural tendency by throwing money at it. You cannot turn people liberal by just giving them more and more money and better roads. If they have a tradition, a cultural tradition of voting authoritarian right wing, they will continue to do so. It's waste of money.
But why is German liberal democracy so important for Europe then?
The largest country in Europe, the largest economy in Europe, frankly, the only economy which can be a world-class rival in terms of industrial production. France perhaps, but without Germany, there's no Airbus even. So Europe cannot survive without Germany. What would it be? So it's absolutely vital that Germany should survive as a liberal democracy for the survival of the EU, which I completely support, and therefore for the survival of what we call the West in itself. It's absolutely vital, and thank goodness German politics is actually much more stable than people at the moment seem to think. People from other countries, particularly Anglo-Saxon countries, where we have this fatal 2-party system, we tend to get very amazed when someone writes an article saying, oh my God, the AfD is now the 2nd biggest party. Because we think in American or British terms, wow, that means they're the opposition. And it's not true, of course, in Germany, because you have a multi-party system in Germany. So the basic fact in Germany is that every time they have their thing called the Sonntagsfrage, every week they do a survey of people's voting intentions, and every week it says practically the same thing. It says around 65% of people will vote for the 4 big parties, but that's fine because we know these 4 big parties can work together at every level. They do. They work at local level, at state level, and at Bundesebene, the level of the federal government, in all possible combinations. They are all pro-NATO. They are all pro-EU explicitly. And they have different offers, which is a good thing, but they can all work together. So provided none of them decides that it is okay for tactical reasons to make a coalition with the AfD is no problem.
Yeah, but in Germany there is not only the AfD. There is there is very much sympathy for Russia, also from the left.
This is the problem.
Really dangerous. How do you see it?
Well, there's a lovely concept which your viewers might know in German politics called the Hufeisenpolitik, which means politics doesn't go left to right; it goes like this, and the right and the left meet up here. And Frau Wagenknecht is the perfect example of this. Frau Wagenknecht is a former hard left politician who now understands, she would say of Germany, sie wittert, she senses that for her, as an I say ausgediente, politician from the left, the last chance for her is to get AfD voters, because the two extremes meet, and both Die Linke and AfD are pro-Russian, anti-NATO, anti-EU. And it's not something that should surprise us. All students of politics really, I think, have to nowadays get away from this idea of the left and the right. We basically have the respectable parties and the extremists. And thank goodness in Germany, the respectable parties, what the Germans call the Bürgerlichen Parteien, will stick together. They might argue, but if even Herr Lindner and Frau Baerbock can get on, then we're fine.
Yeah. So your postscript in this book is from 2022. What would you add today?
I would add that what I said then is true now, but more urgently with the events in Ukraine, obviously. I wrote in that book then that Germany must act, that Germany must be treated as, and Germany must act as, a great land at the heart of Europe. Personally, I wish that the present German government had been black-green, as the Germans say, in other words, Christian Democrats and Greens. I think that Scholz, because Herr Scholz of the SDP knows that he was only really elected because of voters from Die Linke. We know this. 600,000 voters went from Die Linke to SPD at the last election. It's only because of that he is Bundeskanzler. He doesn't dare be too open or be too keen or even to do enough with Ukraine, whereas Baerbock and the CDU would have done far more. So Germany, I want Germany to stop being scared of its own past and to understand its own past better, and to understand, yes, an entity called the German Empire did terrible things. The Second Empire, and even worse, the Third Empire. But these were not truly German. These were Prussian. The Prussians have gone. The word Prussia no longer exists. My father-in-law was a Prussian. He was brought up in Prussia. The land he was brought up in, his own land, is now in Russia. Right? It's beyond Poland even. That Germany has gone forever. Thank goodness. And with it, all the scars from your dueling and the goose stepping and the Prussian militarism, all that's gone. So Germany is now a normal country like Italy or France. But it needs to not be scared of itself. There are too many people in Germany on the left who say, oh no, we can't do this. We can't give weapons to Ukraine because of the Nazi past. We can never send our troops anywhere because of the Nazi past. When Germans understand, yes, there was a Nazi past, but it was thanks to Prussia, and that's no longer there. Germany should be free, and Europe needs Germany to be more confident and free of this mad idea that they cannot act with the boldness that, say, Macron is doing at the moment.
But I have to ask about anti-Semitism that is rising now. From the left and from the right side, how do you see that?
It's happening all over Europe, of course. I mean, even my wife is Irish, and even in Ireland, which is supposedly a neutral country, there are people there saying hateful anti-Semitic things. I don't think it's particular to Germany. Sadly, it does seem to be associated with immigrant populations, largely Muslim immigrant populations. I don't think it's a problem that's going to. I don't think it'll last beyond the present conflict in the Gaza Strip. To me, it's not. Well, until there are genuine outrages against Jewish citizens, then if that happens, if that were to happen in somewhere like Germany, then of course it would be a huge problem, or in France or Britain, and we need to act against it. But in general terms, the West needs to be more confident about these things, about itself, about what it means, and about how to defend itself. And above all, we need to stick together. The West, America, Europe, Eastern Europe, the new parts of the EU have all got to stick together. And if we do, then we can easily be the equals of America and China in the world economy and militarily. The crazy thing is that Britain and France and Germany, without America, spend far more on defense than Russia. The EU should be able to defend itself, even without America if necessary. And it may well come to that. So my postscript would be: it's more urgent now than ever for Germany to take the lead in ensuring that Europe stays together.
Yeah, it's also easier for the West to do that, because human beings, they have this natural tendency to freedom and democracy.
Yes, I mean, and clearly, and I think if we keep our nerve, then we will find that Putin will be defeated. If you'd asked people 2 years ago, it would have seemed very, very unlikely that Finland and Sweden would want to join NATO.
Oh yeah.
That is a huge blow to Russia when you think about it geopolitically.
Yeah.
He's actually constructed an alliance which should easily be able to resist him and beat him.
Yeah.
But we need the confidence. We need to be, particularly the Germany, the AfD and Die Linke in Germany. They need to drop this really strange anti-Americanism, which is really the heart of it. That's the one thing that troubles me about some people in Europe and in Britain, is that there is this sense that somehow, yeah, it's all America's fault,
Yeah.
Now, of course, there are things that I personally hope very much that President Biden wins again, not President Trump. America is not a paradise, for God's sake, but to be so anti-American that you prefer Russia is just insane.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, just look at what is happening now in Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. And God's willing, those things will happen more. But it depends. Most of the Germans say Frontzeigen. We've got to stand up to him.
Yeah.
And the trouble is that every time he mentions a nuclear bomb, people become terrified. But you notice it's very interesting to see that the Estonians and the Lithuanians, they aren't scared.
Yes, much more.
Because they know that the danger is real. The danger is tanks rolling in, not nuclear bombs. So they've been there, they've experienced it.
Yeah.
And really, Germany should know better. Because
So,
East Germany was just a satellite of the Red Army for 40 years. So the Germans should be aware of that.
oh yeah. So your wish for the European elections?
That all the centre parties are victorious all across the board.
Great. Okay. And what are your plans for the future? Now we know that you're writing so you wrote the shortest history of Germany, and then the shorter history of England, and now you're writing
Ireland next, because my wife is Irish, so I'm writing Ireland next, which is quite difficult for an English person. You have to confront, you have to confront the fact that England in Ireland was at times monstrous.
Oh, okay. I'm looking forward to read it, because I don't know very, very much about that. So, two more questions. What would you recommend to those who want to become writers?
Read and read and read. First and foremost, you have to read lots and lots before you can possibly write. And above all, it's more like sport than anything. You've got to do it daily. So if you want to become a writer, whether that's a non-fiction writer or a fiction writer, you have to do a certain amount a day. You don't have to sit by your desk 6 hours a day, trying desperately, I must write something. But always have a notebook with you in case something occurs to you when you write down. But also every day write something, even if it's only a diary. Because it's like any craft or any sport. You do those 10,000 hours. Like the gurus say, and that's the way you do it, and it's a long haul. You have to. Very few people really break through until they're in their 30s. So if you're young, have another job, or be rich.
Okay, thank you. And now I would like you to read the first page of the part 1 of the shortest story of Germany.
With pleasure. I shall
it's
just
something
call
that
it up from
we could read today on the newspaper.
Now I just caught up here. My mouse has stopped working. Hold on a sec.
Coming.
Here we go.
Yeah, from the ancient Romans' time, what they were talking about.
The chapter is headed Caesar Invents the Germans. In March 60 BC, the main topic of conversation in Rome, wrote the philosopher, lawyer, politician Cicero, was the threat of barbarian asylum seekers. They were flooding into Romanized Cisalpine Gaul, that means today's northern Italy, because of unrest and wars further north. There seemed to be a new and troublesome power in unconquered Transalpine Gaul. So in 58 BC, Julius Caesar, the new governor of Cisalpine Gaul, itching for a war of conquest to make his reputation and clear his debts, gave them a name, Germani.
Thank you. So,
yeah. Get back to you there. No,
yeah.
I haven't got back to you. Sorry. There we go. There. Thank you. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for your time and of course your great work.
Thank you.
And yeah, till next time, maybe.
Absolutely.
In German.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.